The findings were buried in technical journals. They were not broadcast on the news. Your supermarket did not send you a warning. The results showed that nearly half of all honey samples tested showed signs of adulteration. Not trace amounts. Not technical anomalies. Half. And yet the jars stayed on the shelves. The labels still said pure, natural, 100% honey. The bees on the front were still smiling. This is not a story about bees. This is a story about what happened when one of the oldest, most sacred foods in human history, a food that, and marketing departments whose only relationship with a beehive is the one they printed on the packaging. You have to understand something before we name a single brand. Bottom shelf at your local Tesco. It is not honey in the way your great-grandparents understood honey. It is an industrial substance, a processed commodity, a logistics solution dressed up in amber light and countryside imagery. Real honey, genuine, raw, single-origin honey, is a living product. It contains over 200 bioactive compounds, enzymes that activate when they touch your mucous membranes, antioxidants that shift depending on which wildflowers the bees visited, antimicrobial properties that have genuinely resisted bacterial cultures in laboratory conditions, pollen particles that act as a fingerprint, a biological record of exactly where that honey came from. You don't know it, but that fingerprint is the most important thing in the jar. And the industrial honey market has spent decades learning how to erase it. Ultra-filtration. That is the process. High-pressure filtering that strips pollen from honey so completely that DNA analysis cannot trace its geographic origin. No pollen means no accountability. No origin means no regulation. No regulation means anything can be in that jar. Sugar syrups, glucose solutions, rice syrup from processing plants in countries with no honey safety standards. Blended, heated, filtered, and repackaged as something that legally qualifies as honey but shares almost nothing with what a bee actually produces. They don't tell you this because they don't have to. And it gets worse. Heat treatment. Industrial honey is routinely heated above 40 degrees Celsius, the point at which the enzyme diastase, which gives raw honey its biological activity, begins to degrade. Above 70 degrees, it collapses almost entirely. The honey you buy in a heated, filled in a production line format is nutritionally closer to flavored sugar syrup than to anything a bee intentionally created. The bees built something extraordinary. The industry engineered it into submission. Before we go any further, if you have never once questioned what is inside a honey jar, this video will change that permanently. Share this before we even get to the list. Because every person in your family who reaches for supermarket honey tomorrow morning deserves to know what we are about to tell them. Hit subscribe, because this series, exposing what the UK food industry quietly replaced your real food with, is just getting started. Now, let's talk brands. 7. Sainsbury's own brand blended honey. We start not with the worst offender, but with the one that most of you have in your kitchen cupboard right now. Sainsbury's own brand honey. The label is tasteful. The price is affordable. The jar sits alongside artisan jams and British conserves, absorbing respectability by proximity. What the label actually tells you, hidden in small print beneath the Country of England branding, blend of EU and non-EU honeys. That phrase, that single, sanitized phrase, understand what it conceals. It means this honey could have originated in any combination of countries: Vietnam, China, Ukraine, Argentina, Hungary, each with radically different quality standards, inspection regimes, and antibiotic usage policies in commercial beekeeping. It has been transported, consolidated in industrial processing facilities, blended for color, consistency, and viscosity, heat-treated for shelf stability, and bottled under a brand name that tells you nothing and hides everything. You can't see the fields the bees visited. You can't trace which processing plant this passed through. They don't tell you what temperature it was heated to. They don't tell you whether any pollen survived. The transparency collapsed the moment it entered the supply chain. This is not Sainsbury's honey. This is a logistics product wearing a Sainsbury's label. 6. Tesco Everyday Value Honey. Tesco's value range honey sits at a price point that should, by the basic economics of beekeeping, be impossible. Real honey production, responsible, single origin, properly managed apiary honey, has a cost floor. Bees take time. Flowers take seasons. Extraction takes care. The moment you see honey at a price that undercuts that floor, you are not buying honey. You are buying the industrial approximation of honey, sourced from the cheapest available global supply, filtered to remove any evidence of origin, and priced to make you feel like you're getting a bargain. You are not getting a bargain. You are getting exactly what the margin allows, which is very little. 5. Gale's Honey. Here is where the story gets darker. Because Gale's isn't a faceless supermarket own brand. Gale's has heritage. Gale's has history. Founded in 1919, the brand built a loyal following across British households for decades on the promise of consistency and quality. Then it was acquired, passed between corporate owners, absorbed into Heinz Celestial, a multinational natural products conglomerate whose portfolio spans dozens of countries and hundreds of product lines. And somewhere in that transition, the soul of a British honey company was quietly replaced by the operational logic of a global supply chain. The honey in a Gale's jar today is blended. It is sourced internationally. It is processed at scale. The 1919 founding story still lives on the website. The beekeeper imagery is still there. But the relationship between Gale's and any specific field, any specific hive, any specific geographic moment, that was stripped away. The heritage became marketing. The history became packaging. They don't tell you that. Because nostalgia sells and transparency doesn't. 4. Asda Smart Price. Honey. Rock-bottom pricing. Global sourcing. Maximum filtration. If there is a single product in this list that most honestly represents the industrialization of a natural food, it is the bargain shelf honey at a discounted grocer. What does rock-bottom pricing require? It requires sourcing from countries where labor is cheapest, where environmental and welfare regulations are loosest, where antibiotics in commercial beekeeping are still permissible, and where bulk consolidation and ultra-filtration make it effectively impossible for any regulatory body to trace what is actually in the blend. In 2018, the Food Standards Agency conducted honey testing across UK supermarkets. The results? Quietly published in technical annexes. Not headlined. Not communicated to consumers. The system failed to act on its own findings. You don't know what country this honey came from. You can't verify its antibiotic history. They don't tell you what temperature it was processed at. This is not food. This is a sweet, industrial substance with a legal claim to the word honey and almost nothing else. 3. Morrison's The Best Honey Blended. This one stings differently because it is labeled as the best. In marketing language, the best is a promise. It implies curation, implies quality control, implies someone, somewhere, decided this was the premium option. What the best actually means in UK supermarket labeling is, this is a premium tier within a value-driven private label range. It means slightly nicer packaging and possibly a marginally higher quality blend. It does not mean single origin. It does not mean raw. It does not mean pollen intact, enzyme active, properly traced honey from identified British or European apiaries. It means we engineered the appearance of quality without the cost of actually delivering it. That is not the best. That is the best looking, the best marketed, the best at making you feel like you chose well, while the profit margins made the real choices for you. 2. Capilano Pure Honey, UK distribution. Capilano, Australian brand, UK shelves, and a history that should have followed it to every country it sells in. In 2011, Capilano was at the center of one of the most reported honey adulteration controversies in the Southern Hemisphere. Australian investigative journalists and independent lab testing raised serious questions about ultra-filtration practices, pollen removal, and origin transparency. The company disputed the findings. The legal processes were long. The public debate was loud. And then the brand moved on, rebranded, repositioned, found new markets. The structural question, how do you source enough honey at the scale and price point a multinational requires with genuine single origin integrity, was never fully answered. Because at industrial scale, it cannot be answered. The maths of mass production does not allow for the transparency of real beekeeping. They don't tell you about 2011 when you pick up the jar. They don't put the controversy on the label. The label has sunlight on it, and a bee, and the word pure. Pure. That word has been doing an enormous amount of dishonest work for a very long time. 1. Rose honey. Number 1. The biggest, the most visible. The brand with the biggest advertising budget and the longest shadow. Rouse is the UK's leading honey brand. You have seen the adverts. The rolling English countryside. The golden light through oak leaves. The suggestion, never stated, always implied, that this honey comes from somewhere nearby. Somewhere you could visit. Somewhere a real beekeeper in a real suit pulled frames from real hives. The reality? Rouse sources its honey from over 30 countries. The company has publicly confirmed this. It is not a secret, in the sense that it is technically available information. But it is not prominent. It is not in the advertising. It is not the story being told when you reach for a Rouse jar in a British supermarket. Rouse was founded in 1945 in Oxfordshire. For decades, it genuinely was a British honey operation, with genuine domestic sourcing relationships. Then scale arrived. Then shareholders. Then the acquisition by Vallejo Foods, an Irish private equity-backed food group managing dozens of brands across Europe with a mandate to grow revenue, optimize margins, and deliver returns. And slowly, inevitably, quietly, the Oxfordshire story became a brand identity exercise, and the honey inside the jar became a global commodity blend, heat-treated for shelf life, filtered for visual consistency, sourced from wherever the price was lowest that quarter. The countryside on the label is not the countryside in the jar. The beekeeper in the advertising has not touched this honey. The relationship between Rouse and British bees is, at this point, primarily a marketing relationship, and they have never once felt the need to tell you that clearly. The alternatives, the truth, the action. So what do? You don't stop eating honey, you reclaim it. You buy raw honey, unheated, unfiltered or minimally filtered, cloudy, crystallized, imperfect, and alive. You buy single-origin British honey from traceable apiaries. You look for the word raw on the label. You look for a named location, a named beekeeper. You buy from farmers' markets. You look for the True Source certification or the Soil Association organic mark on UK products. You ask the question the industry does not want you asking. Where exactly did these bees live? And here is the truth they never tell you at the end of these investigations. Real honey exists. British beekeepers producing traceable, raw, bioactive honey are still out there. They are just smaller. They are just quieter. They cannot afford the Rouse advertising budget. They cannot supply Tesco at scale. But they can supply you. And the choice you make every single time you buy honey is a vote. A vote for the supply chain that prioritizes your health and the truth, or the industrial system that prioritizes convenience, margin, and the comfortable lie printed in golden letters on a mass-produced jar. You now know what they hoped you would never ask. Use it. If this video changed how you think about what's in your kitchen, share it. And comment below. Are you going to check your honey jar tonight? Because knowledge is the only thing the supply chain can't filter out.